Welcome, everyone. I am Najma. I am the program manager here at Data and Analytics Research Environments UK, and I lead the community building program at DARE UK. And this webinar is about the community group funding opportunities. So just to give you an overview of what's coming, there is, I'm going to briefly speak about the DARE UK vision and the background. I'll go into the differences between the interest groups and the working groups. So what are the DARE UK community groups? And if you're thinking about which one to apply, hopefully this will bring some more clarity. And then the overview of the funding opportunities. So what we're looking for, how to apply, expectations around public involvement and engagement. And at the very end, you'll have a Q&A session. So just diving into the vision of DARE UK. So what are we about? It's sensitive data affecting people, communities, and populations. And it's all about data linkage. So safely connecting sensitive data to benefit people, communities, and populations. And so it all feeds into the vision. So for all research and innovation to benefit from seamless, secure use of diverse sensitive data at a pace, efficiency, and scale approaching that of the open data ecosystem that revolutionizes research productivity and accelerates research to deliver public good. And our mission is to put the UK at the forefront of sensitive data research and innovation by assembling the tools and technologies and standards needed to streamline secure data linkage and use. So now in terms of where we are with the project, we had phase one, which was very much about our activities and outputs to establish some of the foundations of a joined up, trustworthy national network of secure data research infrastructures. Phase two, where we are right now, builds on that foundation. And this is where, we're looking to develop and test and build the digital infrastructure needed for secure, large-scale research on like complex issues, complex societal issues like childhood obesity, mental health, unemployment, and so on. So this idea is to enable faster, safer use of sensitive data through improved capabilities such as a federated analysis and secure AI model training. And we're hoping by enhancing data access, improving compatibility between trusted research environments and strengthening stakeholder collaboration. So again, this is through community engagement. Phase two will empower researchers to ask new questions, accelerate results, reduce both time and cost and burden of working with linked sensitive data across the UK. So now where do the DARE UK community groups fall into this? So the DARE UK community groups, what we see them as that's collaborative forums. And they're housed within our community building and engagement and standards work stream of the DARE UK program. And really, the idea is to bring together diverse communities across the UK sensitive data research landscape to co-develop work that's aligned with DARE UK's vision. So it has to feed into the vision of DARE UK, and it's been modeled under the Research Data Alliance community group. So what that means is that it operates under a charter, and the charter is set by the community members, the conveners, outlining its purpose, activities, and approach. And then the groups undergo an endorsement process before they launch. So this charter is very important. It's very key to the work. They have to follow a code of conduct to ensure effective and respectful collaboration. But it's open to all, the idea is you will have open outputs, open communication. We want knowledge sharing to happen. We want best practices to be shared. And all of this, again, is to strengthen sensitive data research in the UK. And this is to give you an idea, this is our second round of community funding. These are the groups that have so far been approved by us through a charter. Some are funded, some are currently unfunded. So, I really encourage you to just go on our website, explore the community groups to get a set. And if you're still unsure about like how a charter works, all of this is open access. You can access it on our website. You could read through the charters to give you a sense of how everyone is operating with their current funding. And so there are different kinds of community groups for different functions. So we have interest groups and we have working groups. And here I've outlined these kind of key differences. And there is overlap, but so the overall purpose of interest groups, and interest groups they could be an ongoing group that's happening right now, but they're not funded by us. And the idea is with an interest group that they will continue regardless of this funding, of this DARE UK funding. So they explore ideally broad, open-ended challenges. Whereas with working groups, we see them as very specific, traceable pieces of work. So in our case, we're saying we're giving the funding for 12 months, so it's short-term funding. And then often with interest groups, you might find that it might motivate the group to form a working group. But this is not always the case. And working group may end up being formed as a result of an interest group. But again, if you are looking to, find funding independently, this is definitely possible. So the idea, the outputs, what we see with interest groups is that it's network building, it's inclusive, it's relationships, it's collaboration. Whereas with interest groups, there's going to be these practicable deliverables. So whether it's a report, whether it's evaluations, recommendations, and so on. And I've listed a few examples there. And again, please explore the website. You'll see, how these interest groups and working groups operate differently. Now, getting into the funding. Right now we have this funding for interest groups is at 100%. Groups can apply for up to around 1,400 and 625 pounds. And so this is for, the timeline is a bit different than longer than working groups. This is to support ongoing community engagement, management, and networking activities for an 18-month period. So we'd like to, ideally, the earliest it could start is October 6th of this year. But if you, again, are planning for November, that's fine, but this is the earliest it can start. And it will go to the end of our phase 2 activities, which is March 2027. And again, funding will be provided at 80% of the full economic cost. So the amount that DARE UK will give is the of 112,500. So just like some activities that you could be budgeting for, it's salaries, it's overheads for community management and coordination, workshops, conferences, events, this includes your travel, your venue hire, and any support for communications and engagement activities, start, for example, like a website, and all of this is to feed into the work. And another point I want to just make is where the timeline we have is that August 4th is the deadline, and our goal is to, get this decision to you by mid-September. And with this idea of commencing the work by October 6th. But, there's always, depending on the organization and even once the decision is made, there's always a chance that the work might, the processes of just getting the funding to you might take longer. We can always backdate for the cost going back to October 6th. And the working groups have much more easier, well-rounded number. They can apply for 125,000, again, to produce these very specific community-defined outputs. And like I mentioned, it's for a 12-month period. So it will be the work will ideally commence in October and end in October 2026. So even if you decide that the work, let's say because of XY reason, it can't start till November, it doesn't mean that the work will then end the following November. The end date latest is October 2026, I believe the last day of the month. And so funding, again, will be provided at 80% by us, which brings it up to 100K maximum. And you can request for the same things that I mentioned with the interest groups, salaries, overheads, and so on, but it has to be for work that is for these working group outputs. So again, workshops, conferences, websites, software licenses, and so on. Now, who is eligible? We are UKRI funded, so it has to be research organizations that are eligible for UKRI funding. I will put a link in the chat of these related to these eligible organizations, but just to again explain the funding here, the funding is provided at 80% of full economic cost, so we call FEC for short. So this means that applicants should calculate their total FEC of their proposed project, but only request 80%. So we still expect you, when you're doing your budget, to break down this cost by 80% and 20%. So 80% will be covered by DARE UK, 20% will be covered by your host organization. So for example, if the total FEC of a working group is 125,000, DARE UK will contribute 100K, and your host institution is responsible for the remaining 25,000. So, and just to bring up, there are community groups that are now currently, they have their charter with us, but they have not received funding. So they are eligible to apply. But any community groups, the ones that I had with the icons earlier, they are not eligible to apply. So if you currently get funding from us, you're not eligible. However, again, community groups that you are not receiving funding, you are welcome to apply. So what are we looking for? I mean, it's, again, the main thing is to really think through about how your goals of your working or interest group align with the DARE UK vision. And it's very broad, but it's very important for us for you to bring new and diverse inclusive networks. We really want to see collaboration between researchers and stakeholders. And that's why we're requiring at least a minimum of 2 co-chairs from different organizations. And as well as that, we want to see at least a public member, a member of a public contributor as a co-chair. We look at really broad-based representation in the group membership. And then within your application, we want to see how it's all being co-developed. The application can be led by the co-chairs themselves, but we expect that the plans to be co-developed with all of your group members, that there is full consultation and support from all your members. So that's really important to us. And, you know, what are we looking for? Again, very broad, and these are areas where I'm putting them out there, but I want you to know that you're not limited to these, you know. So, for example, technology and tool evaluation and comparisons in the semi-automation of TREs, trusted research environments, review and recommendations of data standards, review and recommendation of governance models, reviews and recommendations of cost recovery or other funding models related to TREs, or like defining effective public engagement strategies around building and running secure, trustworthy infrastructure and conducting open and transparent research using sensitive data. So again, these are just some examples. You're not binded by these. Just leave it as that. So how to apply. So the main part, and some of you have already done this, you know, there are some existing interest groups that have already applied for a charter and completed their charter. So the first big step is to complete your charter. This covers the why, the what, the how, the who of the group. And this charter will be endorsed by DARE UK. And then the next big step is to complete a funding application form. So your application form will not come to us directly. It's going to go to a panel. So this is where you got to make your case strong, like set out your planned, you know, what are your outcomes if it's with an interest group? What are your outputs if it's with a working group? And your approach to delivering these. We want to see your team, your team, are they capable of delivering these outcomes and outputs, your project plan, and then your resource and cost justification. And for the existing interest groups, you're halfway there. You simply need to submit the application form only. But if there's an update with your charter, you're welcome to send us a new charter. The deadline is the 4th of August. This is a hard deadline, 6 p.m. Please make sure to CC procurement as well as the inquiries email when you submit your application. And then, of course, let us know if it's an interest group or a working group application in the subject title. And then how will it be assessed? For your working group or your interest group, your community group to be endorsed, again, it needs to align with the DARE UK overall vision and our objectives. What we'd like to see is that we'd like typically, I say typically at a national scale. However, if you're specific, like your work is specific to a city or an area, what the argument we'd like you to make is like, how can this be scalable? How can this be applied to all 4 nations? We'd like to see cross-domain data domain agnostic work, and we don't want to see this work being carried out anywhere else. I personally find the application very straightforward, but I really, you know, within the application, there are assessor questions, and those are the questions that you will be scored on. So pay close attention as you're writing your project plan, that you are answering those questions, and that will go into your scoring, and the panel will be using those questions to score you.
Nudge, I can't see the slides anymore, but I'm not sure if that's the case for anyone else.
Oh, is it? Let me just see quickly. I'm sorry. So odd.
Yeah, I can't see either.
Okay, I'm coming back now. So just full screen. Yeah, perfect.
Was it where did I lose you?
This one.
Okay. All right. So what I was saying here is, yeah, like even if your work is, we'd love to see it at a national scale, but if it's specific to a place, you know, you need to make it generalizable. It can't be specific. Um, and I think I was saying that the assessor questions are really key. And, you know, make sure as you're doing the application form that your scoring criteria will be based on those questions. And again, it's not Dare UK that will be scoring you. It will be going to an outside panel. And then the last slide, you know, public involvement and engagement. You know, we are really, Dare UK is committed to meaningful public involvement. And, you know, for the funded funded working groups, there has to be public involvement. So this might be include through workshops, focus groups, the you know, a public review of the outputs. You know, it's just really important to us to see these activities. They need to be integrated into the timeline. They need to be budgeted for, and there is no cap on the PIE budget. Ideally, we say 10%, but more is justified. And then and I think we are, and now I will open it up, and I'll just leave it open to this slide. Specifically, you know, please make sure to subscribe to our newsletter. And those are the QR codes. And let me see if I could, I don't see anyone right now, but let me see if I could see you guys while having the QR codes opened. See, okay, I could see the chat now. So any questions?
There were two questions in the chat that came a bit earlier on. One from Fahana Lisa, asking for a bit of elaboration on public contributors. Fahana, I don't know if you want to speak to that a bit more. But yeah, that's the first question.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Najmi. Yeah, I just don't. I need a bit clarification on what you mean by public.
We would like
contributor, so my research is on education sector, and I'm working on systemic safety and security from AI, generative AI tools in education. So in that scenario, what would be a public contributor?
Well, who I would ask, like, who is your work for? Who's your audience for? Yeah, so it could simply be, it could be someone from, I mean, a public contributor is a public member. And the reason we want a public member to be part of these groups is so they have that insight from the outside of how your work is relatable to them, and bring that perspective of the public. I mean, we also we have public advisory groups that, and I believe I have some. I can see some familiar faces, and can I put you on the spot, Angie? Just on because I feel like you have provided that insight as a public PAG member.
So, hello everyone. I've recently just joined the UK Public Advisory Group. It's a new experience for me. So I would say something like your project. If I take it to one of the Chine chats that we do, which they have kids or in universities or something like that, I would say, what's your feedback? Are you worried about AI being used with your children? What do you think? Do you think you can do without it? Do you want to use it? Do you want to opt out? stuff like that. So I don't know whether this is relatable, whether Najmi has put me on the spot, but this is how I would see it as a public, because I've joined the groups, even though I have background data and finance and stuff like that. I wanted to bring the personal aspect of people and give them a voice, rather than things being or projects being there thinking it's for them, but they actually don't want it or don't relate to it. Does that make sense?
So can I say something? Oh,
Good. Please finish your, and then I'll have Lizzie come in.
okay, thank you. Thank you, Nazma. Yeah. So because my research, as I said, is higher education, so university level students, how they see, what factors actually influence them to use generative AI in their educational process and learning and assessment and everything, or what are the barrier for them to use those generative AI tools. But my overarching sort of agenda is to find, or at least identify and mitigate, any epistemic risk involved in this process. So in that scenario, what would be a public contributor? Because the students are, most of them are more than 18 years old and they have GDPR. Many of them protected by the GDPR. So they don't want to, we don't want to sort of explicitly involve their name and identity. So how the public contributor can help, because the example you gave, like the parents wants to know how their education or something. So in this scenario, what would be a public contributor, or what organization can we work as a public contributor?
Lizzie, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I was just going to make more of a general point, not necessarily in response to your question, but just in terms of our public involvement and engagement guidelines. So it's always a really important part of all of our funded projects. Sorry, I should have introduced myself as well. I'm the Senior Engagement Manager in the DARE UK team, so I lead on the Public Involvement and Engagement Programme. But there's a great resource that Michelle has put in the chat that the team developed with loads of guidelines around how to embed public involvement in your project. And it's really about getting input on the way that you're carrying out your project in a way that's acceptable to the public. So it's very much about making sure that you're considering public interests and concerns in the work that you're doing. And it's a really useful way of getting perhaps insights that you hadn't considered, as you know, from a as technical experts. You might not have seen it in the way that people who don't have a technical background view it, you know, as a general member of the public. So it can be really useful and helpful, and it's just a really important part of ensuring that you have that public acceptability. So please do take a look at the guidelines that Michelle has dropped in the chat as well.
Or I can't always see who's fine, but I hope that answered your question, Farhana.
Yeah, it does answer my question in terms of why it is needed, but I'm still not sure what kind of organization can be public contributor, because university itself a kind of public organization, and the students are not public, but they are adult and they can take their decision. So are they considered as a public, or does it need to be like someone outside academia to be considered as
so
public?
It's actually people outside of academia. So it's more members of the public who are not directly involved in the organizations that are involved in the research. So, for example, our public advisory group was recruited from the public. So, Angie here today was recruited as a direct member of the public rather than as having any kind of existing involvement with the organizations. And in terms of recruitment, which can be tricky, you know, recruiting public voices, that's a really important and often challenging part of public involvement and engagement, but we do have guidelines on that, and we have the DARE UK public advisory group, and we can support with getting that recruitment as well.
So just an example, so the parents of the students can be public, right?
Yes, although there might be a conflict of interest or some sort of biases there, so you need to consider that when recruiting. But in theory, yes.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Yeah, but I think one point that we probably need to make a bit clearer is the fact that you need to have one public member co-chair as part of those who look after the day-to-day running of the group.
So that
Thanks,
would be a
Leslie.
part of, sorry, apologies. So is it like a part of the recruitment process that someone has to be chair, they need to self-designate themselves as a chair of that group? Or how does it, like, how do you choose someone as a lead?
So in the past, people have opened up the opportunity to, just publicly advertise to, we're seeking members of the public or a member of the public to join this interest group focused on this, to be part of the governing team of the group. Expectations are attending meetings, being part of activities, helping to craft and deliver several outputs and all of that stuff. Make it public, take applications, and people come in and join the group. In other cases, it's been a case of referring, between other groups who have more public members who probably want to be involved in more than one group. There are a lot of ways to go about that. And like Lizzie mentioned, it's something we can support with. And in some cases also members of our own public advisory group, although there might be bits of conflict there, could also want to be involved in your group activity. So it just depends on which way you want to go about it. But in the end, you do have to have a member of the public as part of the co-chairs of the group, whether it's interest or working.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
I'm just seeing any other questions. And
Ludivine has got her hand up.
Thank you. I was wondering, following the discussion we've just had, on the application itself, will it suffice to describe the approach we will take to identify a public co-chair, or do we need to actually name the person already on the application?
I believe you would have to name the person, but Wesley, what has been the experience in the past? I think by the time the application and the charter, because we want the charter to be submitted at the same time as the application, all of those details need to be worked out.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
ideally, we want the full list of co-chairs submitted alongside the application. But we do acknowledge that that can be quite tough to do sometimes, especially in terms of securing a member of the public to become a co-chair of the group. So we've allowed for applications to be submitted and assessed, and then a public member recruited afterwards. But ideally, we want the full list of co-chairs because it does offer, it has some implications on your application, because then we know everyone who will be involved in the group that you're applying for funding for.
Thank you.
And I saw another hand. Emily?
Hi, thank you. Just for clarification, if you're working with a voluntary sector organisation and they are going to be one of the co-chairs, do you then also need a public partner as a co-chair?
They're volunteer, but are they considered members of the public?
I suppose they would be more kind of representatives of community organisations, so representatives of communities.
Ideally, we want it to be members of the public, because already it's all too corporate and institutional and academic. So it's that different dynamic that we're looking for here. So rather than bringing in yet another organization or structured entity, we'd rather just a member of the public directly sitting on the group governance team as a co-chair. And it should be an individual, not an organization.
Great, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Just going through the chat, I saw, can a private company partner with eligible UKRI funding organization to form a working group? If this company is under the UKRI list of organizations, it should be able to form a working group, but it has to be eligible. Did we, sorry, I'm just, did we share the link of,
Yeah.
yeah, we did share the link of eligible organizations, yeah.
Yeah, so probably one thing to point out also is that you can collaborate with partners that support with public involvement and engagement, like Ipsos, for instance, or a digital, I think there's one called Digital Critical Friends Group, or you can collaborate with them, but that's in delivering the PIE components of the group's work, but they can't sit as an organization on your board. So you can collaborate however you think fit for your group, but then you can have them as a co-chair. Just wanted to point that out.
And then there was a question about the grants being awarded. The grants will be through Dare UK. Are there any other questions? I'm looking through the chat. Yes, we will make the slides available, and I don't know if I could go ahead and edit this presentation to take off the first 5 minutes where I was on mute, but the webinar will also be available.
There's a question from Colm, just clarifying about existing groups and whether they're eligible to apply. And if existing groups can apply to be a new working group, but not an interest group. So I think if a group is already an interest group, can they apply to be a new working group?
So yeah, interest groups often lead to new working groups. You can apply, but you have to make it, it needs to be very specific, different outputs than an existing working group, and how it's different from an interest group, so it needs to have that kind of like end date of what you're going to do within those 12 months. If that makes
sense. Yeah,
I understood that. Yeah, go ahead.
To jump in and clarify. So if a group is coming to this call entirely new, they have to apply as an interest group because you have to be an interest group already in order to apply as a working group?
No. So I guess the first step for you is if you have not been, because I was like, I don't recognize your name, so I don't think you've been funded by us. So if you have no funding from us, you're welcome to apply as an interest group and or working group. But you have to make it very clear, so the interest groups are kind of ongoing. The idea is like, they're more like broad-based about collaboration, networking, and the idea is that this group will continue past our funding period. But with your working group, it's 12 months, very specific deliverables. And yeah, like they can, in the past, there have been interest groups that have led with that, I'm trying to think of which one, like that the AI group that was there came out of a previous interest group, but it doesn't have to always be the case.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. There were any other questions? And I'm just looking. All right. Oh yeah, Angie, go ahead.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, as this is all new to me as part of PAG, PEDRI is one of the existing groups as an interest group, right? So within PEDRI, if there is an interest for women's health in disparaged diaspora, and that's not covered within the PEDRI projects, can an organization approach and work in partnership with PEDRI and then hence be eligible as a working group or an interest group or one or the other? Or is that?
I think with PEDRI, they would, because they're currently funded, they would be eligible for a new working group.
Okay. So the application would be to approach PEDRI as an interest group to form a new collaborative working group.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Because I know this because of the way PEDRI's funding has been through with us. And they currently have a working group that's been funded, but they are still eligible for a new working group that would result in new outputs, not anything, as long as they could make the case that this is something completely different from their currently funded working group. They're welcome to apply.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, I will leave it there. And let me see if I could see all your faces now. And yeah, so thank you all for joining, and good luck with your applications. Please, if you have any other questions later, feel free to email me. There's also the communities, and I hope you can stay in touch and join our follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe to our newsletter, and just be in touch. Okay, thanks very much. Bye, everyone.